Hey guys, tonight we drift softly into one strange question. A question that moves like a slow boat across dark water, barely making a sound. What if Cleopatra walked among us today? What if the last queen of Egypt, wrapped once in linen and legend, opened her eyes not to torchlight and incense, but to neon, glass, and the distant hum of engines? What would she see? What would she feel? And what quiet fears or gentle curiosities might stir in her ancient heart as she wandered through our unfamiliar world? And so, as you settle into your pillow, as your breathing slows and the day loosens its grip, allow history to stop shouting and begin whispering. Allow it to become boring, gentle, and kind. Like a story told after midnight by someone who does not wish to wake you, only to keep you company for a while if you enjoy falling asleep to. History, you know the small ritual by now. Like unsubscribe, not loudly, not urgently, but as one might place a bookmark between pages. A quiet promise to return. Now imagine a darkness that is not quite night and not quite morning. A soft, in-between moment where time itself seems unsure. And within that uncertainty, Cleopatra awakens, not rising from a bed or a tomb, but surfacing as if from deep water. Her first sensation is air, thick and unfamiliar, carrying the faint bitterness of metal and smoke. Nothing like the clean, dry breath of the Nile at dawn. This air hums softly, vibrates almost, as if the world itself is alive with unseen insects. She inhales slowly, cautiously, and the smell confuses her senses. There is no myrrh, no lotus, no oil burning in shallow bowls. Instead, there is something sharp, something electric, and beneath it all a constant low sound. A distant rolling like thunder that never rives. Her eyes open, and light floods in. Not the golden spill of sun across stone, but fractured light, white and blue and red, reflected and multiplied, bouncing off smooth surfaces that feel colder than marble. She blinks, her lashes trembling, and the sky above her is wrong, impossibly tall and narrow, cut into pieces by towering cliffs of glass and steel that rise higher than any monument she ever commanded to be built. These structures do not feel sacred. They do not bow to the gods. They feel busy, restless, filled with invisible lives stacked one upon another. And as she stands, her bare feet touch the ground, which is flat and hard and faintly warm, vibrating gently as if something large is moving beneath it. Around her, people pass, wrapped in strange fabrics, some soft, some stiff, dyed in colors both dull and blinding. They do not look at her, or if they do, their eyes slide away quickly, as if she is only another shadow in a crowded dream. No one kneels, no one gasps, and this, perhaps, is the first wound small, but sharp, for Cleopatra was once a gravity, a center, a presence that bent rooms around her, and here she is simply another figure. Standing beneath an enormous sky made of buildings, she listens, and the sounds are layered. Footsteps tapping like rain on stone, voices murmuring in countless tongues, some familiar, many not. And above it all a constant rushing, as if the city itself is breathing, exhaling heat and motion through unseen lungs. Occasionally a sharp cry cuts through. A horn, she flinches, her hand moving instinctively toward where a dagger once rested. But there is nothing there now. Only air. She begins to walk. Slowly at first, each step measured, her posture still regal, though no one seems to notice. And as she moves, the city reveals itself in fragments, glowing symbols that shift and change images. That flicker on massive flat surfaces, showing faces larger than life, smiling, selling, promising. She pauses before one. Such vision, a woman's face, smooth and luminous. Eyes lined darkly in a style that feels strangely familiar. The eyeliner is hers, reborn and exaggerated. And though the name beneath the image means nothing to her, she recognizes the echo. The way her own image has traveled through time, shedding truth, gathering fantasy, becoming something marketable. The image changes, and now there is a bottle, a jewel-toned thing floating against darkness, promising beauty, power, desire, and Cleopatra exhales softly, a sound almost like a laugh. Because she understands this language, she understands the selling of longing. She did it once with gold and ceremony, with stories of gods in her blood. And here it is again, louder, brighter, but not so different. She moves on, drawn by motion, by a river of people flowing, toward a yawning mouth in the ground, steps descending into darkness. And she follows, the air growing warmer, closer, filled with the smell of oil and iron below. A train arrives, screaming softly as it slows, its doors opening like the jaws of some metal beast. She steps inside, steadying herself as it moves, faster than any chariot, smoother than any boat. And the walls blur, lights streaking past like captive stars. Her heart remains calm. She has crossed seas, faced armies. This too is only movement, only power harnessed by human will above ground again. The day shifts without ceremony. Clouds drift, light softens, and she finds herself in a vast open space. A museum. Though she does not know the word, she knows the feeling, the hush, the reverence. The careful placement of objects meant to outlast their makers, and there, behind glass, she sees it. Something achingly familiar, a statue, her father's nose perhaps, the curve of a brow she has, traced with her own fingers long ago. The stone is labeled, dated, explained, reduced to small printed words. And around it stand visitors, reading, nodding, moving on. Cleopatra stands very still, her reflection faintly visible in the glass, layered over the face of an ancestor. And for a moment time folds in on itself, the past staring at the present. Unrecognized further on, she finds bodies, wrapped and preserved, their skin darkened by centuries, their names lost or half remembered. And she feels a quiet sorrow, not for death, which she knows well, but for distance, for the way these once living people have become objects of curiosity. And yet, there is also relief. They are remembered, not entirely gone. And perhaps that is the bargain all civilizations make, to trade warmth for endurance outside again. The sky deepens toward evening, and as darkness falls, the city does not sleep. Lights bloom everywhere, thousands upon thousands, like the stars of her childhood scattered across the earth instead of the heavens. And she looks up, expecting to see the familiar constellations, but they are drowned out, hidden by human brightness, and she wonders, not sadly, just curiously, What it means when a civilization no longer needs to look up for guidance somewhere above, unseen. Machines pass, cutting silently through the dark. And though she does not yet understand them, she senses their presence the way one senses a god, without seeing its face. And this leads her thoughts gently, inevitably toward power, toward who holds it. Now there are no banners, no temples at every corner, no priests calling the hours. Instead, there are screens, schedules, invisible systems humming quietly. And she feels neither threatened nor comforted. Only thoughtful she sits at last, on a bench warmed by the day's lingering heat, and listens to the city settle into its night rhythm, laughter drifting from somewhere distant, the soft hiss of tires on wet stone, the occasional chime of a crossing signal telling people when to move, when to wait. And she smiles faintly, because even here, in this strange age, life is still organized around simple things: movement, rest, desire, fear, and time. Always time. Her eyelids grow heavy, not from exhaustion, but from understanding, from the slow acceptance that the world has not ended, only transformed. That her Egypt did not vanish, it dissolved into this, into wires and lights and stories told to strangers through glowing rectangles. And as she leans back, letting the city's low murmur cradle her thoughts, Cleopatra begins to dream, not of thrones or battles, but of continuity, of humanity endlessly reinventing itself, building new Alexandrias atop the bones of the old. And that thought, gentle and unthreatening, drifts outward toward you, toward this quiet moment where history becomes a lullaby, and the past at last lets you rest. And so she wandered onward, carried not by purpose, but by quiet curiosity, the kind that does not rush, the kind that drifts like a leaf on slow water. Cleopatra moved through the modern night, as if she were a memory walking inside a dream. The city breathed around her, warm air rising from hidden vents, carrying the smell of rain on stone, mixed with oil and distant food, fried and sweet and heavy, smells that made her think of market streets long gone, where spices once clung to the air and voices bargained gently beneath cloth awnings. She passed places where people gathered to eat, sitting close together yet speaking very little, their faces lit by small glowing objects held in their hands, tiny suns they stared into with devotion. Cleopatra slowed her steps, watching their fingers move, tapping, sliding, summoning images and words from nowhere. And she felt a soft wonder, not fear, because she had lived in a world of scrolls and messengers, of libraries where knowledge slept on shelves, and here knowledge flowed freely, endlessly, like the Nile in flood season. Though she wondered quietly how much of it truly nourished those who drank from it, she noticed how often people smiled at these small screens, and how rarely they smiled at each other. And this made her think of mirrors, of how humans have always loved reflections. Even when they forget the face beside them, her walk carried her toward a place of moving stairs that lifted people without effort. She stepped onto one carefully, feeling it carry her upward, as if by magic, and she thought of slaves and labor, of the thousands of hands once needed to move stone, to raise temples, to lift a queen. And she felt a strange mix of pride and sadness. Pride that humans had learned to ease their burdens, Sadness that they still found new ones to carry above. The air was cooler, and she emerged into a wide open square where music drifted softly from unseen speakers. A slow melody repeating itself, calming, designed to be pleasant rather than meaningful. And she listened, tilting her head, comparing it to the music of her court. The sharp pluck of strings, the deep breath of flutes. And she realized this music asked nothing of the listener. It did not tell stories or praise gods. It simply filled space, like scented smoke nearby. A tall pole held a banner showing her face, or something like it. Dark eyes, straight nose, strong jaw, though softened, polished, idealized. Her name written beneath in letters she could almost read. Cleopatra felt no anger, only quiet amusement. Immortality had found a strange path, not through temples or prayers, but through posters, movies, and stories told by people who never knew her. She wondered which version of herself they loved. The ruler, the lover, the myth, or the warning as night deepened. She followed the flow of people into a vast building filled with seats, all facing one direction, a place of shared attention. The lights dimmed, and a giant screen came alive, showing moving images, stories without actors physically present, and she sat, drawn in, watching wars unfold in minutes. Love bloom and die between cuts, history reshaped for comfort and drama. She recognized Julius Caesar. Though younger and handsomer than memory, she recognized herself. Though thinner, louder, speaking words she never said, and she felt a soft smile form because she understood now stories were the true rulers of this age. Not kings or queens. When the images ended, people stood and left quickly talking about nothing, already forgetting what they had seen, and Cleopatra rose to stepping back into the night, where rain had begun to fall, light rain, gentle, tapping on metal and glass, neon signs hissing softly as drops touched their warmth. She lifted her hand, letting water bead on her skin. Rain was still rain, unchanged, honest, falling the same way it always had. She walked until the city thinned, until the buildings grew lower and trees appeared, dark shapes whispering in the breeze, and she found a park. A small piece of nature carefully contained, paths lit just enough to feel safe. She sat on the grass, damp but cool, and closed her eyes for a moment, listening to leaves, to distant traffic, like a faraway sea. And she thought of Alexandria, of gardens and fountains, of scholars arguing gently under columns, and she realized something that surprised her. The past was not better, it was simply slower, somewhere above her, unseen. A plane crossed the sky, its lights blinking steadily, and though she could not see the shape clearly, she felt at the idea of humans flying like birds, crossing continents in hours, and she imagined herself aboard such a thing, looking down at the earth she once ruled, now divided by lines and borders she never knew. And she wondered how power felt when distance meant so little. Her thoughts drifted toward weapons, toward the quiet knowledge she sensed in this age. The knowledge of destruction held carefully behind doors and codes. She did not need to see bombs to feel their presence, just as one feels a storm before it breaks. And she thought of her own wars fought with swords and ships, slow and personal, and she felt relief that she no longer ruled. That Such choices no longer rested on her breath. Dawn approached without ceremony, the sky lightening slowly, and with it came new sounds, birds mixing with engines, footsteps returning, the city waking again without memory of her passing. Cleopatra stood, brushing grass from her skin, and began walking once more, carried now by a softer feeling, acceptance. She passed a school where children gathered, laughing, complaining, carrying bags heavy with books and hopes they did not yet understand. She watched them with interest, noticing girls speaking freely, loudly, boys listening, sometimes following, and she felt a deep, quiet satisfaction. Power had shifted, not disappeared, and that was enough. She followed the sound of water to a river, not the Nile, but something smaller, contained by stone walls, reflecting the pale morning light. She knelt, touching it, feeling its cold truth. Water had seen everything. It did not care for empires or machines. It flowed on, and she whispered nothing, because words were not needed. As the sun rose higher, warming the city once more, Cleopatra felt herself growing lighter, less solid, as if her time here was thinning, like mist under light. She looked back at the buildings, at the people, at the glowing signs fading in daylight, and she understood that this world did not need her, just as hers no longer existed. And there was peace in that. She took one last breath of modern air, sharp and strange, and smiled softly, not as a queen, not as a legend, but as a human who had seen the future and found it quietly familiar. And as she faded, as history gently reclaimed her, the city continued, unaware, alive, humming, and that hum remains with you now, steady and low, guiding your thoughts toward rest, toward sleep, where past and present blur, and nothing needs to be ruled. That led her slowly, and without hurry, into another day, because time here did not bow or announce itself. It simply moved, and Cleopatra moved with it. Morning light spilled gently across the city, soft and pale, touching glass towers and quiet streets, and she watched people begin their daily rituals, opening doors, lifting metal shutters, pouring dark liquid into cups, and drinking it as if it were medicine, their faces half asleep, half thinking. She followed the smell, bitter and warm, into a small room where many stood close together without speaking, and she felt the heat, the steam, the low hum of machines. She watched the dark drink being made again and again, quickly, without care, and she tasted it when someone set it down and walked away. It was sharp and strong and made her chest feel awake, and she smiled softly, because even in this age, people still relied on small plants to push back the weight of waking. She stepped back outside, holding the warmth of the cup between her hands, feeling how people here carried comfort with them in cups, in music played through tiny wires in their ears, in clothes chosen for ease rather than beauty. And she thought of linen robes, of heavy jewels, of how power once had weight, real weight, pressing on the body all day. She walked past a place filled with moving images behind clear walls, people running on paths that went nowhere, lifting heavy objects only to put them down again. She watched their faces tighten and relax, sweat forming, effort repeated for no clear reason, and she understood. This was how they trained their bodies now, not for war or work, but to feel control in a world that moved to fast further on. She saw a place of healing, bright and clean, smelling of sharp air and quiet fear. People moved quickly inside, dressed all in white, carrying knowledge instead of incense. And though she did not enter, she felt respect. Bodies had always needed care, whether from priests or doctors, and the wish to stop death or at least delay it had never changed her. Steps carried her toward a great road where metal beasts rushed past endlessly, their voices loud, their smell heavy, and she waited, watching lights change color, telling people when to cross, when to stop. She waited obediently, amused, because even freedom here followed rules. Invisible but firm, across the road stood a tall building filled with words. A library, though it looked nothing like Alexandria. No scrolls, no scholars debating aloud. Instead, rows of silent tables, glowing screens, fingers moving, eyes fixed, knowledge flowing without sound. Cleopatra moved among, then quietly touching spines of books, feeling paper beneath her fingers, smiling at the survival of this simple thing. She read words about herself, written by strangers long after her death, arguing over her beauty, her mind, her mistakes, and she felt no anger, only a gentle distance. Like listening to people discuss the weather of a land she once lived in. She left the library as the sun climbed higher, warming stone and skin, and wandered into places of buying and selling. Long halls filled with objects stacked neatly, lights bright, music soft, people moving slowly with baskets, choosing what to take home. She touched fabrics smoother than silk, saw fruits from lands she never knew existed, tasted sweetness made stronger than nature ever intended, and she thought of trade routes of ships heavy with grain and gold, and how the world had folded inward, bringing everything close. To close, perhaps. Children cried here, laughed there, someone argued softly over price. Someone else stood staring at nothing, lost inside thought. And Cleopatra realized this age was not so different from hers, just louder, faster, more crowded with things. Afternoon came gently, shadows shifting, and she found herself drawn toward a tall stone building with flags, a place of rule, of decisions made in rooms far from their effects. She sensed power here, not dressed in gold, but in paper, law, agreement. She thought of monarchy, of divine right, of being born into rule, and she considered democracy, this strange idea of shared voice, messy and slow. She felt no judgment, only curiosity. Power always changed its clothes, but never its hunger. As hours passed, her presence grew thinner, like smoke spreading. She noticed people walking through her, not seeing, not feeling, and she understood her visit was ending, not suddenly, but kindly. The way sleep comes. Evening returned, bringing cooler air and softer light. The city preparing itself again for night. And Cleopatra walked one last time through streets now familiar, hearing the same sounds, smelling the same mix of rain and oil and food. And this time it felt almost like home. Not Egypt, not Alexandria, but a place humans had built to survive together. She stopped beneath a screen showing stars. Real ones, captured by machines and shared with all, distant galaxies turning slowly, and she felt a deep calm. The sky had grown larger, not smaller, even if few looked up as darkness settled. Cleopatra's form faded further, until she was more thought than body, more memory than flesh, and she accepted it easily. She had died once already. This was gentler. The city lights shimmered like torches along the Nile, reborn in white and blue. And somewhere far away, people slept, dreamed, worried, hoped, just as they always had. Cleopatra closed her eyes, not in death, but in rest, leaving behind no sound, no mark, only a question, carried softly on the night air. And that question drifts now into your quiet room, into your slowing breath, into sleep, where history does not shout. It only hums, and yet her story did not fully fade. Because memory has its own slow way of walking, and so Cleopatra drifted again, not waking this time, but observing, like a soft breath moving through rooms she could not touch. She moved through homes where people lived high above the ground, rooms stacked on rooms. She watched families eat together while looking at glowing boxes that spoke back to them, telling jokes, telling news, telling fear. And she noticed how silence had changed, how it was now filled with sound made by machines. So people would not feel alone. She passed through bedrooms where children slept holding small lights in their hands until sleep finally won. And she smiled gently, because even now humans needed stories to fall asleep just as they did. When elders once spoke beside fires, she moved through offices where people sat all day, staring at light, their bodies still while their minds traveled far, and she felt a quiet sadness for backs bent not by stone, but by chairs, yet also a quiet respect. Work had changed its shape, not its weight. She drifted into places of worship. Some old, some new, some empty, candles replaced by electric glow, prayers whispered or sung or typed. And she felt the same human hope, rising from all of them, the wish to be seen by something larger, even if its name had changed. She floated through hospitals at night, hearing soft beeps, footsteps, breathing machines. And she saw the thin line between life and death, guarded by knowledge instead of magic. And she felt calm, because the care was real, the hands steady, the fear honest. She passed into streets filled with signs calling people to buy, to want, to need. And she laughed softly, because desire had simply learned a new language, louder, but less personal. She moved through places of play, where people watched others run, fight, win, lose, cheering loudly for colors and names, tribes reborn without blood. And she thought this was wise. Better to release battle through games than through war. She drifted higher now, above the city, seeing patterns form, roads like veins, lights like stars fallen to earth. And she understood something very simple. Humans had not changed at the center. They still loved, feared, built, destroyed, remembered, forgot. Her thoughts moved toward beauty, toward faces shaped by tools and paint and light, toward images shared again and again. And she wondered if beauty still held power, or if power now shaped beauty. And she decided it was both, as it always had been. She remembered being watched, judged, written about. And she felt no anger, only a quiet humor. Humans always needed symbols, and she had become one. Flattened, stretched, re-oozed, and yet still alive in a way. She felt the pull of sleep growing stronger, not just for herself, but for the world. Night settling like a blanket, slowing streets, dimming windows, softening noise. She drifted into the internet itself, though she did not know the word. A vast unseen space where voices met without bodies, where arguments burned hot and fast, where love appeared and vanished just as quickly, and she sensed danger and beauty living side by side, like a market and a battlefield sharing the same square. She noticed how people searched for meaning there, typing questions into the dark and waiting for answers. And she wanted to tell them something simple, that meaning was never found in speed, but in patience. But her voice could not reach them now. Slowly, gently, her presence thinned again, spreading into the hum of wires, into the glow of screens, into the quiet ticking of clocks. She was no longer a queen walking the world. She was a thought resting inside it. The city slept deeper, fewer cars. Past lights turned off one by one, and the sky above grew darker, stars faint. But still they're waiting. Cleopatra let herself rest fully now, not in a tune, not in memory, but in the long river of human. Time flowing forward without her carrying everything with it. And as you lie there, listening, breathing slow, feeling the day release you, her calm settles to reminding you that worlds change, people change, but the gentle act of resting has always been the same. And so Cleopatra drifted further, carried along by quiet curiosity, as if the world itself breathed slowly and invited her to follow. She moved through markets, where smells mingled: baked bread, roasted nuts, coffee, sharp and dark, something sweet and sticky. She could not name. Children laughed, chasing each other, their feet slapping on stone and tile, and she paused, listening to their simple joy, remembering how laughter had always been the same. A bridge across time. She walked past people hurrying, carrying bags, phones pressed to ears. Voice is low and fast. She noticed how their eyes rarely met, focused on the path, the tasks, the invisible maps inside their heads, and she thought of her own court, the palace corridors, where eyes followed her always, but differently, with awe rather than avoidance, and she smiled softly, realizing human attention had changed its shape, but not its hunger. The sun rose higher, warming streets that smelled faintly of rain left behind. Stone baked, metal softened, and Cleopatra followed a river of people into a park where grass and trees offered a quiet pause. She sat on a bench, feeling the warm wood under her hands, listening to leaves whisper, and she noticed birds darting between branches, fearless, or at least appearing so, moving as if they owned nothing but the air nearby. Someone played a violin, soft, almost invisible, notes floating in the air, and she closed her eyes to listen, remembering music played for gods, for kings, for herself, and she realized music had not changed. Only the stage had. After a while she wandered toward a museum, glass walls glowing softly, revealing treasures inside, humans moving quietly. Voice is hushed, as if the objects themselves demanded attention. She paused before a display of ancient coins, her image stamped into metal, worn by centuries, handled once by kings, now behind glass, and she thought how strange it was to be both everywhere and nowhere, remembered yet distant, present yet invisible. She walked on, into a hall filled with paintings, people staring at brushstrokes that told stories in color and shadow, faces frozen forever, some familiar, some strange. She traced lines with her eyes, imagining the hands that created them, and felt the slow passage of time pressing against her own memory. she found herself near a section of technology. Machines that hummed quietly, lights blinking softly, small screens glowing in the dark. She touched a smooth rectangle, feeling warmth beneath her. Fingers a tiny sun that responded to her touch, and she understood it held voices, knowledge, pictures, all collected and shared. She imagined the world of her court condensed into a single box, voices and knowledge moving faster than any messenger ever could from there. She wandered into a room with mirrors, large, reflecting her face. The queen long gone, but eyes still sharp, lips curved faintly, and she laughed softly, seeing herself repeated over and over, altered, reshaped, some younger, some older, some smiling too much, some frowning too little. And she thought of power, how it survives, even when bodies fade. Evening approached, and the light softened, casting long shadows across marble and tile. She walked to a terrace and looked out. The city stretching endlessly, lights beginning to bloom one by one, a slow rhythm like fireflies or candles. She breathed in the faintly cool air, feeling it on skin once dressed in gold and silk. She passed a theater where people sat in quiet darkness, watching stories unfold, some true, some imagined. She watched their faces, noting the rise and fall of emotion, realizing humans had not changed their love for story, only the delivery. And she thought stories were immortality. Without sleep further along, she discovered a place where people slept sitting, lying, reclining, eyes closed, breathing soft and even, some alone, some with others. She observed, silently, feeling the quietness grow around her, a calm river stretching through the city, carrying humans toward rest. And she allowed herself to drift lightly along the current. She wandered near a school, children playing outside, voices high and clear, teachers moving between them like gentle shepherds. She noted their energy, their simple hope, and thought of learning in her time, of scrolls, tutors, scribes, and she smiled, seeing the same desire to understand, to grow, to reach beyond. Twilight fell slowly, deepening the sky, softening colors, making buildings loom gently, less harsh, more alive. She walked to a bridge and looked down at water reflecting lights above, boats moving quietly, their hum soft, gentle. She imagined Alexandria's canals, the same water, same reflection, different city, and felt the slow comfort of continuity. Somewhere high above, a plane passed, lights blinking, crossing silently, carrying humans who slept or worked. She watched, thinking of travel, of freedom, of distance conquered without horses, ships, or chariots. And she felt the small thrill of understanding how far humans had learned to go. She passed a small cafe, where people sat outside, drinking warm liquid, chatting softly. Her nose caught the smell of pastries and bread, simple pleasures unchanged by time. She sat nearby, invisible, listening, feeling the slow rhythm of life continue. Night deepened, streets emptied, lamps flickered, neon hummed softly. Rain began again, tapping metal, glass, concrete. Cleopatra raised her hand, letting drops run over her fingers, laughing faintly. A memory of rain in Egypt mixing with this strange, quiet rain. She walked slowly toward a quiet square where fountains glimmered, water moving in patterns, spilling and catching light. She touched it, felt the coldness, the movement, the life. Realizing water had always been the same teacher, reminding humans of time and flow, and she let herself rest beside it, closing her eyes, breathing slowly, feeling the city cradle her gently. And so, Cleopatra drifted once more through the quiet night, carried not by feet, but by thought, by soft observation, by the gentle hum of a world moving while she simply watched. She moved through streets now nearly empty, the faint smell of rain still clinging to asphalt and stone, the air cooler now, carrying distant smells of cooked food left behind, smoke faint in the distance, a small dog barking somewhere far, soft and sharp, and she thought of animals in her, time, cats and dogs, birds resting on palace ledges, the soft presence of life always near. Always watching, she found herself in a quiet alley where walls were covered in colors, paintings and writings layered over each other, people's thoughts and feelings pressed into space. And she traced the lines, soft and uneven, touching shapes as if they carried meaning beneath the paint, wondering how humans always sought to leave something of themselves behind. Even when time erases, she wandered into a plaza with fountains, water moving in slow, perfect arcs, lights reflecting off each droplet, creating tiny sparks that danced and vanished. And she remembered the Nile at sunset, water gleaming gold, and red, carrying small boats carrying messages, carrying life, and she smiled, understanding some things never change. Even when everything around them has further along, she passed a quiet square where people gathered to watch images on walls, moving images telling stories, some funny, some sad, some frightening, and she felt the same curiosity humans have always carried, needing to see themselves reflected, needing to imagine life beyond their own eyes, needing to be surprised, soothed, and entertained all at once. She stopped beside a small fountain, listening to the water move, feeling its soft splashes on her fingers, noticing the smell of wet stone, the subtle hum of the city far away. And she thought of time, how it moves differently here, faster than memory, slower than thought. Carrying everything without pause, she wandered past a hospital, hearing soft beeps and distant footsteps, voices speaking low, and she felt the same quiet respect she had felt before. Human life held carefully in hands that know much, hands steady, hands gentle, hands strong. A bridge between past and present, between life and death. The streets became quieter. The rain fell heavier, washing neon lights into reflections on stone and metal, and she let herself follow the sounds, gentle and irregular, letting them guide her like a river flowing toward night. She noticed a small child, looking at a tablet, face glowing softly in the dark, fingers moving fast, eyes wide. And she felt a strange tenderness, remembering herself as a child, curious, eager, alive, with questions, longing to understand a world larger than her small hands could touch. She moved on, passing a bakery where warm light spilled onto the street, smells of bread and sugar mingling, people laughing softly inside, and she smiled quietly, imagining her own kitchen long ago, servants moving slowly, bread baking, oil heated, simple smells that carried comfort human need unchanged. Further, she found herself in a quiet library, rows of books that smelled faintly of paper and dust, some people reading, some writing, some lost in thought. And She remembered Alexandria's great library's scrolls stacked high, scholars debating softly, the same hunger for knowledge. Only the tools had changed. She moved outside again, noticing stars above barely visible beyond the city lights. And she thought of the constellations she once knew: Orion, Sirius, the Great Bear. Their shapes remembered even when hidden, and she felt a calm connection between past and present. A thread running through time that no building, no machine, no human could erase. The night deepened, the city softened, air damp, lights flickering, and she wandered through streets lined with closed shops, doors locked, windows dark, silence carrying the rhythm of a sleeping world. And she felt her own presence soften, more memory than body, more thought than form. She walked past small parks where swings moved slowly in the wind, playgrounds empty, the soft smell of wet grass and earth mixing with distant traffic, and she felt the same peace she had felt beside the Nile, a sense of permanence. Even in change, finally she came to a bridge spanning a small river, water dark but alive, reflecting city lights like stars fallen to earth. And she leaned against the railing, touching the cool metal, feeling the pulse of life moving beneath. And she realized the world was full of small wonders, unnoticed but real, waiting for eyes patient enough to see. She let herself rest there for a long while, breathing slowly, feeling the air, the rain, the soft hum of the city, letting thoughts drift without grasping, understanding that some nights are meant only for watching, for feeling, for being present without acting. The hum of distant traffic, the soft splash of water, the faint rustle of leaves, all mixed into a gentle symphony. And she allowed herself to become part of it, floating lightly, her presence blending with sounds and scents, her heart calm, her mind at peace. The night stretched endlessly, soft and slow. And she walked again, moving past open squares, narrow alleys, quiet streets, feeling each stone beneath her feet, each breeze brushing her skin, each small sound anchoring her to the present. She noticed people walking, some alone, some with friends, some carrying gifts, some silent. And she felt the same quiet wonder she had felt in her palace long ago, observing life, seeing patterns, noticing small gestures that reveal more than words ever could. Finally, she reached a small hill, overlooking the city, lights sparkling like fireflies in a jar. And she sat, legs folded, hands resting on knees, breathing slowly, feeling the pulse of the world below. And she understood fully that this age, strange as it was alive, moving, learning, dreaming, just like her own. And there was a gentle comfort in that realization. She closed her eyes finally, letting the city cradle her fully, rain falling softly, air cool, water moving, lights blinking far below, breathing in rhythm with all life, letting history and present merge into quiet calm, letting sleep arrive slowly, gently, as it always should. And as Cleopatra rested on that small hill, she felt the slow heartbeat of the city beneath her, a rhythm made of people walking, engines humming, water moving, and distant voices carried softly by the wind. She remembered her own city, Alexandria, the market sounds in the morning, the smell of fish and bread, the soft whisper of scholars debating in the library, the call of priests in the temples. And she realized that every city, every age, had its own pulse, its own life, Waiting quietly for someone to notice. Slowly she rose, moving down the hill along paths lined with trees, the smell of wet earth rising up, soft and grounding, her feet brushing grass, damp from rain, each step careful, deliberate, enjoying the simple weight of motion, the softness of the ground beneath, the gentle sway of branches overhead. She wandered into a small square where a fountain flowed, water glinting in the streetlights, people passing, some stopping to drink or rest, children laughing and chasing shadows. She watched quietly, noting how humans had always been drawn to water, to play, to joy, simple things that endure through centuries. She noticed a small shop with glowing windows, baked goods inside, bread steaming, chocolate melting slowly, cinnamon in the air. And she smiled softly, thinking of her own kitchens, of servants preparing feasts for herself and the court. The smells similar yet different. Time and place shaping experience. A soft wind carried voices. From a nearby alley, music playing, someone singing quietly, a guitar strummed gently, and she stopped, letting the notes wrap around her, feeling the calm and simplicity of sound, realizing that music always connects humans, no matter the era, no matter the tools. Always a bridge from heart to heart. She moved on to streets lined with tall buildings, glass and steel stretching into the sky, reflections bouncing light everywhere. She reached out her hand to touch the smooth surface, feeling cold and hard unlike the warm stone of palaces she knew yet. Alive with energy, movement, human intent. She observed people walking with purpose, carrying bags, talking softly into small devices, faces lit by screens, fingers moving fast. And she thought how knowledge and connection had changed, compressed into small objects, flowing faster than messengers could ever travel. Yet still seeking the same human connection she once commanded in halls of marble. She turned a corner and found a small park. Quiet now, dew on grass, birds hidden in trees, occasional soft footsteps of someone jogging, the smell of wet earth and distant bread. She sat on a bench listening to the night, letting the sounds, smells, and touches fill her senses. The city alive yet gentle, a living organism she could rest within. Time passed slowly, almost imperceptibly, shadows stretching, lights twinkling, rain stopping and leaving faint puddles, reflecting street lamps. She watched people cross streets carefully, traffic lights blinking, some stopping, some moving, a rhythm similar to ceremonies in her palace. The rules different, but the purpose the same. She passed a street market, now closed, the smell of spices lingering, faint and familiar. She touched a wooden stall, imagining the hands that had once stacked goods, exchanged coins, bartered softly, and she felt a connection, small but warm, across centuries, between human lives separated by time, but linked by experience. Farther on, she came to a river, smaller than the Nile, yet moving steadily, flowing under bridges, carrying leaves, papers, reflections, the faint hum of water constant and grounding. She knelt at the edge, fingers skimming the surface, watching ripples spread, imagining messages once sent along water, thoughts once carried on boats. And she smiled softly at the continuity of life. She moved along the riverside, noticing small creatures moving through grass, and shadows, insects, birds, even rats, all living their quiet lives unseen. yet persistent, the city both alive and sleeping, and she felt part of this life, not ruler, not myth, just observer and participant in the gentle flow of existence. Night deepened further, stars appearing faintly, some captured by city lights, some peeking through clouds. She lifted her gaze slowly, feeling the vastness, the silence between lights, the quiet promise of infinity. And she realized that time and space do not belong to any one ruler or age. They carry all things gently. Endlessly she wandered back into streets, now nearly empty, neon signs glowing softly, reflections shimmering in puddles, small smells rising from kitchens, trash bins, earth, the city breathing around her, and she felt at ease knowing humans continue, persist, dream, fail, succeed, and rest, as they always have. She noticed small cafes now closing, workers cleaning, chairs stacked, lights dimming, yet the air still carried warmth, the residue of human presence, and she breathed it in slowly, deliberately, feeling a quiet satisfaction, a gentle peace. She passed a small playground, swings moving in the wind, no children, only soft sound of metal against metal, and she watched for a long moment, smiling faintly, remembering her own play as a child, curiosity unshaped by duty, and she felt connection again across time. Finally, she came to a quiet terrace overlooking a wide street. Lights, soft traffic almost gone, water dripping from rooftops. She leaned lightly against the railing, feeling the cool metal, listening to the city hum softly, and allowed herself to rest fully. The world moving gently around her, alive, breathing, dreaming as she herself drifted into calm. And as Cleopatra rested on that terrace, she felt the city around her slow. Even more, the hum of engines, fading footsteps rare now. The gentle tap of rain from earlier reduced to quiet whispers on metal, stone, and glass. And she allowed herself to notice every tiny sound, the rustle of leaves, the soft drip of water into puddles, the occasional distant voice, and felt the rhythm of life continue. Without hurry, she wandered down empty streets, following the soft glow of street lamps, noticing small details she had not seen before, the texture of brick walls, cracks in stone, faint patterns left by rain, tiny plants growing between slabs, evidence of life pressing through human design. And she smiled softly, because even the smallest things endure. Unnoticed yet persistent, she passed a small bakery still glowing, smelling of bread, sugar, yeast, the warmth spilling into the cool night. And she imagined herself stepping inside, touching loaves fresh from the oven, inhaling the sweetness, feeling the simple joy of sustenance, a pleasure humans have always understood. Unchanged by time. Further on, she entered a narrow alley, quiet and soft, walls close, the scent of wet earth and faint smoke rising from small vents. And she felt the intimacy of the space, the way humans create small corners in the world to hold memory, to hide, to rest. And she moved carefully, touching walls lightly, sensing the passage of time embedded in each mark, each stain, each shadow. She came to a small bridge spanning a quiet stream, water moving steadily, reflecting lights like tiny stars. And she knelt at the edge, letting fingers touch the surface, feeling the coolness, the constant flow, imagining all the humans who had once looked at water in wonder, imagining herself as a child, watching the Nile shimmer at sunset. And she realized some truths remain simple and comforting. Across ages, she followed the river's path, noticing small animals darting along the edges, rats, birds, insects, each living its small life quietly, persisting, surviving. And she thought of Alexandria's streets, her palace courtyards, gardens where life existed in small corners. And she smiled at the quiet persistence of living things. She wandered into a quiet square where fountains played softly, water spilling over edges, droplets catching faint light. And she let herself sit, listening to the sound, feeling the vibration of water, smelling wet stone and faint flowers planted at the edges, letting her thoughts drift like leaves on the water. Soft and unhurried from there she moved into streets lined with tall buildings, glass and steel stretching into the night sky, reflections shimmering, each surface catching fragments of light, fragments of life, movement happening even when unseen. She ran her hands over smooth metal, feeling cold, hard, alive with human energy. The city itself, a living organism shaped by countless hands over time. She observed people in passing, a lone figure carrying a bag, a pair of friends speaking quietly, someone walking quickly with a purpose, all moving through the same rhythm, unaware of her presence. And she understood that life continues quietly, persistently, whether noticed or not, whether admired or ignored. It simply flows. Night deepened further. The air cooled. She walked slowly along the riverbank, water flowing quietly, lights reflecting, trees moving gently in the breeze. A soft whisper of leaves, a faint smell of wet soil rising, the hum of distant traffic low and calm. And she felt a sense of timelessness, a gentle connection between the world she knew and this one past and present, folding together like fabric, smooth and soft. She found herself outside a quiet museum, doors closed, lights dim, shadows stretching along the pavement. She walked slowly around the building, touching walls lightly, imagining the treasures inside, objects holding memory, holding human effort, human creativity, human life. And she felt respect, quiet and deep, for the care humans take to preserve what they value. Even when they cannot fully understand it. She wandered into a plaza where statues stood, some old, some new, some abstract, all frozen in silent pose, shadows stretching long across the stone floor. She moved from one to another, letting her fingers brush lightly over cold surfaces, feeling the thought and labor of creation, the echo of human desire to be remembered, to leave a mark. And she realized this desire is as old as civilization itself. As she walked further, she entered a quiet street market, now empty, remnants of goods and smells still lingering. Faint scents of spices, dried fruits, bread, and sweet pastries. She breathed slowly, feeling the familiarity of human habit, the repetition of life. The small comfort in seeing patterns persist across time. She passed a small park, swings moving gently in the wind, leaves whispering, soft earth underfoot. And she noticed a single figure sitting on a bench, reading a small glowing object, fingers moving lightly, eyes focused, the soft hum of concentration. And she smiled, seeing the same hunger for knowledge she had witnessed in Alexandria, unchanged in essence, only in form. She continued along the streets, walking slowly, feeling the cool night air, listening to distant traffic and quiet voices, smelling earth and water, warm stone and faint food. Letting all sensations merge, letting herself become a part of the world without claiming it, without needing to. She wandered near a quiet bridge again, looking down at water. Reflections of lights stretching like silver ribbons, ripples spreading slowly, touching her hand briefly as she traced the movement. And she felt a gentle satisfaction, a calm understanding of life moving forward. Small yet persistent, continuous and patient. Finally, she found a quiet hill on the edge of the city, overlooking the sparkling lights below, the river cutting through the darkness, soft shadows stretching, and she sat again, legs folded, hands resting lightly, breathing in rhythm with the city, listening to the hum, the small water movements, the soft sounds of leaves, feeling connected to all things, past and present, human and animal, earth and water, and she let herself drift fully into calm, letting the night hold her gently, safely, as history itself whispered quietly, sleep arriving slowly, softly, perfectly. And Cleopatra rose once more, moving through the quiet city, the air cool, carrying faint smells of wet stone, food, long finished, distant smoke, and the soft rhythm of life that continued without pause. She wandered along streets, now almost empty, neon signs flickering softly, reflections glimmering in puddles, the hum of distant traffic low and gentle. And she allowed herself to notice each small detail. The curve of a lamppost, the pattern of wet cobblestones, the quiet ripple of water in drains. Each small sensation a thread connecting her to this new world. She passed a small cafe still glowing, faintly, warm light spilling into the street, the smell of baked goods rising softly. And she imagined herself sitting inside, hands resting on a smooth wooden table, eyes scanning the room, listening to voices speaking low and gentle, the same human desire for comfort, warmth, and presence unchanged across centuries. Farther along, she found a small square where music drifted faintly from unseen speakers, soft and slow, notes rising and falling without urgency. She paused to listen, eyes closing lightly, feeling the vibration of sound through the air, the rhythm gentle and unhurried. A bridge across time to the music she once knew, instruments plucked in courtyards, voices raised in song for gods or kings. Now, quiet and shared in new ways, she wandered into a narrow alley lined with small shops, all closed, now remnants of signs and posters still clinging. The smell of wet earth rising from cracks in stone, faint hints of spices, herbs, and bread. She ran her hands lightly over wooden doors, metal handles, feeling textures, remembering how human hands work, always shaping, creating, holding, even when invisible to others. A soft breeze carried the faint sound of children laughing far away, echoing from some hidden park. She paused, letting the sound carry her memory to her own childhood. The river Nile glimmering, soft voices of siblings, servants, tutors, animals moving quietly. The smell of water, sun, sand, and fruit, simple and comforting, enduring. She continued along a riverside path, water moving steadily, reflecting faint streetlights, leaves floating gently on the surface. Occasional bird darting between branches, a dog barking faintly in the distance. The rhythm of the world, subtle, persistent, and she walked slowly, letting each moment fill her senses, noticing the small wonders humans leave in their path. She came to a bridge crossing the river, pausing to lean lightly against the railing, feeling the cold metal under her hands, watching ripples move, imagining all who had once used water to carry messages, to travel, to survive, to dream, and she realized humans always seek continuity, some way to leave the past alive. In the present, small acts repeated, recorded, remembered further along. She wandered into a park lit softly by faint lamps, grass damp from earlier rain, leaves whispering in the breeze, occasional footsteps crunching on gravel paths. And she watched people resting, walking slowly, talking quietly, small gestures of care and connection. The same desires for comfort and presence she had seen in Alexandria. Unchanged in essence, she came across a small playground, empty now, swings moving lightly in the wind, slides glinting faintly. And she sat on a bench nearby, breathing slowly, feeling the calm, imagining children's laughter, the energy of life moving. The same force she had known in her own time, simple, powerful. Enduring night deepened, air cool, streets nearly empty, lamps flickering softly, reflections glimmering in puddles. And she wandered through alleyways, quiet squares, streets lined with closed shops, the city breathing gently round her. Life persisting in silence, she passed a small fountain, water spilling steadily, soft and constant, droplets catching faint light. She traced circles in the air above the water, feeling its cool mist, noticing the smell of wet stone and faint greenery. And she understood that small, constant things carry life across centuries. Unnoticed yet persistent, farther along she found a quiet library. Doors closed, lights dim, a faint smell of paper and ink rising from small vents. And she imagined the scholars of her time, scrolls stacked high, debating softly. The same human hunger for knowledge, unchanged in essence, only the form different. She wandered into streets lined with tall buildings, glass and metal reflecting faint light, shadows stretching long, windows dark. And she ran, her hands lightly over cold surfaces, noticing small imperfections, patterns left by time, and feeling the quiet persistence of human labor effort and care across centuries. She passed a quiet cafe, where a single person sat reading a small glowing device, fingers moving lightly, eyes focused, and she smiled softly, seeing the same hunger for understanding she had witnessed in her own era. Curiosity unchanged, tools transformed. Finally she found a small hill at the edge of the city, overlooking lights sparkling like distant stars, the river cutting through darkness, soft shadows stretching. And she sat, legs folded, hands resting lightly, breathing slowly, listening to the hum of the city, the soft splash of water, the whisper of leaves, feeling the world alive and calm around her, letting sleep descend fully, slowly, softly, as she had many times before, knowing history moves gently, carrying all who have come before. And Cleopatra rose again, feeling the calm of night around her, the city breathing slowly, the air carrying faint smells of wet stone, earth, distant bread, and subtle smoke from hidden chimneys, a mixture of life and stillness. And she let herself follow it quietly. Moving through streets now nearly empty, she passed narrow alleys lined with closed shops, wooden doors, metal handles, graffiti soft in the dim light, small details of human effort left behind, traces of life that continue even when unseen. and she ran her hands lightly along walls, feeling the texture, imagining hands from long ago touching the same space. Moving across time, she wandered to a small square, where fountains flowed softly, water spilling gently, droplets catching faint light. The sound soothing, constant, like a heartbeat, and she paused, letting herself breathe slowly, feeling the calm in the rhythm of moving water, noticing the faint smell of wet stone and flowers planted at the edges, small reminders of human care. Farther along she found a park, grass-damp trees swaying gently in a soft wind, leaves whispering occasional footsteps, crunching on gravel paths, and she walked slowly, noticing every small sound, every faint smell, letting herself feel fully present, the city alive yet gentle. Carrying life quietly around her, she passed a quiet cafe with warm light spilling onto the street, the smell of bread and coffee faint, imagining herself sitting inside, hands resting on a wooden table, listening to soft conversation. The simple human need for comfort and presence unchanged across time. A thread connecting past and present, she wandered along a riverside path, water flowing steadily, reflecting lights. From distant bridges, occasional leaves floating, small ripples spreading gently. And she traced the movement with her fingers, remembering messages sent on water boats gliding. Slowly, humans watching currents, life moving persistently, endlessly. Quietly, a soft breeze carried faint sounds of laughter far away, children playing, voices high and clear. She paused to listen, letting the sound connect her to her own past, her childhood. Venial, small joys that persist across centuries, unchanged at their core. She wandered into streets lined with tall buildings, glass and steel reflecting faint light, shadows stretching long. Windows, dark, textures smooth and cold beneath her fingertips, alive with human energy and effort. The city a living organism shaped by countless hands. Over time, night deepened. Streets nearly empty, lamps flickering softly, reflections glimmering in puddles. Distant traffic hum low and steady. She walked slowly, noticing every small detail. The curve of lampposts, with stone patterns, small plants growing through cracks, evidence of life pressing gently through. Human design. She passed a quiet playground, swings moving in the wind, slides glinting faintly, and she sat on a bench nearby, breathing slowly, imagining children laughing, energy of life moving through space. The same force she had felt in Alexandria. Simple and enduring, she wandered past a small library, doors closed, faint smell of paper and ink, imagining scholars of her time, scrolls stacked high, debating softly. The same hunger for knowledge unchanged in essence, only the form different farther along. She entered a quiet street with small fountains along the edges, water moving gently, reflecting faint light, and she knelt, letting her hands skim the surface, feeling cool, constant movement, understanding that small, persistent things carry life across centuries. Unnoticed yet essential, she wandered into a narrow alley where art covered the walls. Graffiti and murals layered, smells faint of wet paint and earth, fingers brushing lightly, imagining hands pressing color onto walls, human desire to leave a mark, to be remembered. Unchanged across time, she passed a river again, water dark and flowing steadily, reflections shimmering faintly, small animals darting along the edge, insects, birds, creatures living quietly, persistently, and she felt part of this life, observer and participant, small and soft. Moving gently through space and time, finally she climbed a small hill overlooking the city. Lights sparkling like distant stars, river cutting through darkness, shadows stretching long. She sat, legs folded, hands resting lightly, breathing slowly, feeling the hum of the city, soft splash of water, whisper of leaves, the world alive and calm, letting history and present fold together, letting sleep descend fully, gently, slowly, as it always should. Knowing she was neither lost nor forgotten, only resting in the quiet flow of time, and Cleopatra stayed on that hill for a long time, letting the city breathe around her. The night deepening, the air cool, carrying faint scents of wet stone, distant bread smoke, and grass, a mixture soft and grounding, and she allowed herself to notice everything. Each sound, each smell, each shadow moving slowly across streets she walked down from the hill. Along quiet streets, neon signs flickering softly, reflections glimmering in puddles, the hum of distant engines low and steady, and she let herself move slowly, observing small details she had not before. Cracks in stone, small plants growing between slabs, soft scratches on walls, marks of human life pressing through time. Unnoticed yet persistent, she wandered into a narrow alley where the air smelled of wet earth, faint herbs, and bread long finished, and she traced her fingers lightly along the walls, feeling textures, remembering hands from long ago touching the same surfaces, shaping, creating, leaving marks, a quiet human ritual continuing across centuries. Further on, she entered a small square where fountains flowed softly, water spilling gently, droplets catching faint light, the sound constant, soothing, like a heartbeat, and she paused, letting the rhythm fill her senses, the smell of wet stone and faint flowers rising, the gentle movement a reminder of life's persistence. She wandered through parks with damp grass, trees swaying softly in the breeze, leaves whispering faintly, occasional footsteps crunching on gravel paths, small details of life unfolding quietly, humans moving slowly, resting, talking softly, small gestures of care and connection unchanged across time. She passed a cafe with warm light spilling softly into the street, imagining herself sitting inside, hands resting lightly on a table, listening to quiet conversation, smelling bread and coffee, feeling comfort and presence, simple human desires unchanged. Connecting past and present, she wandered along the riverside, water flowing steadily, reflecting faint lights from bridges, leaves floating, small ripples spreading slowly, and she traced them with her fingers, remembering boats carrying messages, humans watching currents. Life moving persistently, quietly, endlessly. A soft wind carried distant laughter, children playing. Far away she paused to listen, letting the sound carry her back to her own childhood, the Nile at sunset, soft voices, playful energy. Simple joys enduring across centuries. She entered streets lined with tall buildings, glass and metal reflecting faint light, shadows stretching long, and she ran her hands lightly over smooth, cold surfaces, sensing the energy, effort, and persistence of human labor across centuries. The city, a living organism shaped by countless hands. Night deepened streets, nearly empty lamps flickering, softly reflections shimmering in puddles. Distant traffic hummed low. She walked slowly, noticing every small detail, the curve of lampposts, whetstone patterns, small plants growing through cracks. Evidence of life pressing through human design. She passed an empty playground. Swings moving lightly in the wind, slides glinting faintly, and she sat on a bench nearby, breathing slowly, imagining children laughing, energy of life moving, the same force she had felt in Alexandria. Simple and enduring, she wandered into a quiet library. Doors closed, faint smell of paper and ink. Imagining scholars of her time, scrolls stacked high, debating softly. Hunger for knowledge unchanged in essence, only the form different farther along. She found quiet streets with small fountains along the edges, water moving gently, reflecting faint light, and she knelt, letting her hand skim the surface, feeling the cool, constant movement, understanding that small, persistent things carry life across centuries. Unnoticed yet essential, she wandered into narrow alleys where art covered the walls. Murals layered, faint smell of wet paint and earth, fingers brushing lightly, imagining hands pressing color onto surfaces, human desire to leave a mark, to be remembered, unchanged across time she passed. A river again, water dark and flowing steadily, reflections shimmering. Small animals darting along the edge, insects, birds, creatures living quietly, persistently, and she felt part of this life. Observer and participant, small and soft, moving gently through space and time. Finally, she climbed a small hill overlooking the city. Lights sparkling like distant stars, river cutting through darkness, shadows stretching long. She sat, legs folded, hands resting lightly, breathing slowly, feeling the hum of the city, the soft splash of water, the whisper of leaves, the world alive and calm, letting history and present fold together, letting sleep descend fully, gently, slowly, as it always should, knowing she was neither lost nor forgotten, only resting in the quiet flow of time, a queen of memory and observer of now, her mind soft, her thoughts quiet, her heart at rest. And Cleopatra stayed on that hill, letting the city breathe beneath her, the night deep and soft, the air cool, carrying faint smells of whetstone, grass, distant bread, and smoke, a mixture gentle and grounding, and she allowed herself to notice everything, every small sound, the faint drip of water, rustle of leaves, distant footsteps, soft hum of engines, whispers of life moving quietly through the world. She wandered slowly down the hill along streets, now empty, neon signs flickering softly, reflections, glimmering in puddles, the hum of distant traffic, low, gentle, rhythmic. And she let herself notice every detail, cracks in stone, small plants growing through slabs, scratches on walls, marks of human presence. Pressing through time unnoticed yet persistent, alive in memory, she passed narrow alleys, lined with closed shops. Wooden doors, metal handles, faint graffiti soft in the dim light, and she traced her fingers lightly over surfaces, feeling the texture, imagining hands from long ago touching the same walls, shaping, creating, leaving marks. Small rituals of human effort continuing across centuries. Farther on, she entered a small square, where fountains flowed softly, water spilling gently, droplets catching faint light. Sound constant, soothing, like a heartbeat, and she paused, letting the rhythm fill her senses. The smell of wet stone stone and faint flowers rising softly, the gentle movement a reminder of life's persistence. Of time flowing endlessly, she wandered through parks with damp grass, trees swaying gently in soft wind, leaves whispering faintly, occasional footsteps crunching on gravel paths. Small details of life unfolding quietly, humans moving slowly, resting, talking softly. Small gestures of care and connection. Unchanged across centuries, she passed a cafe with warm light spilling softly into the street. Imagining herself sitting inside, hands resting lightly on a table, listening to soft conversation, smelling bread and coffee, feeling comfort and presence, simple human desires unchanged. A thread connecting past and present, she wandered along the riverside, water flowing steadily, reflecting faint lights from distant bridges, leaves floating gently, small ripples spreading slowly, tracing them with her fingers. Remembering boats carrying messages, humans watching currents, life moving persistently, quietly, endlessly. Soft wind carried distant laughter, children playing far away. She paused to listen, letting the sound connect her to her own childhood. The Nile at sunset, soft voices, playful energy. Simple joys enduring across centuries. She entered streets lined with tall buildings, glass and steel reflecting faint light shadows. Stretching long, running her hands lightly over smooth, cold surfaces. Sensing the energy, effort, persistence of human labor across centuries. The city alive, shaped by countless hands, night deepened. Streets nearly empty, lamps flickering softly, reflections shimmering in puddles. Distant traffic hum low. She walked slowly, noticing every small detail, the curve of lampposts, wet stone patterns, small plants growing through cracks, life pressing through human design. She passed an empty playground, swings moving lightly in the wind, slides glinting faintly, and she sat on a bench nearby, breathing slowly, imagining children laughing, energy of life moving. The same force she had felt in Alexandria, simple and enduring. She wandered into a quiet library. Doors closed, faint smell of paper and ink. Imagining scholars of her time, scrolls stacked high, debating softly, hunger for knowledge unchanged. Only the form different farther along. Quiet streets with small fountains along edges, water moving gently, reflecting faint light. She knelt, letting her hand skim the surface, feeling cool, constant movement, understanding small, persistent things carry life across centuries. Unnoticed yet essential, she wandered narrow alleys where art covered walls, murals layered. Faint smell of wet paint and earth, fingers brushing lightly. Imagining hands pressing color onto surfaces. Human desire to leave a mark, to be remembered. Unchanged across time, she passed a river again, water dark, flowing steadily. Reflections shimmering faintly, small animals darting along edge, insects, birds, creatures living, quietly, persistently, and she felt part of this life, observer and participant. Moving gently through space and time, finally she climbed a small hill overlooking the city. Lights sparkling like distant stars, river cutting through darkness. Shadows stretching long, she sat, legs folded, hands resting lightly, breathing slowly, feeling the hum of the city, soft splash of water, whisper of leaves, world alive and calm, letting history and present fold together, letting sleep descend fully, gently, slowly, as it always should, knowing she was neither lost nor forgotten, only resting in the quiet flow of time. A queen of memory and observer of now, her mind soft, her thoughts quiet, her heart at rest. And as the first light of dawn touched distant rooftops, Cleopatra felt the faint warmth on her skin, a reminder that day always follows night, that life continues softly and steadily, carrying all moments, all memories, all humans, all animals, rivers, trees, and cities along its gentle path. And she let herself smile, faintly understanding that her story had changed form, but not essence, her kingdom no longer bound by walls or sand, but flowing quietly through time. And memory present in small details, persistent as water, patient as stone. Infinite as the stars above, she closed her eyes fully now, feeling the soft wind, faint hum of city life, gentle ripples of water below, small sounds of life rising softly, carrying her into sleep, into calm, into quiet understanding that even in a world so strange and new, some things remained simple, enduring. Human, the air smelled faintly of wet grass and distant bread. The river moved endlessly. Shadows stretched softly. Light blinked in faraway windows. Life hummed around her. And Cleopatra allowed herself to drift completely, resting in the quiet flow of history, of time, of existence, as night surrendered fully to the calm of morning, as all things continued softly, gently, quietly, perfectly. Thank you for listening. Sleep well, and may history dream beside you.
Today we will talk about a very old history topic. This story is from a time when there were no house, no cities, no schools and no books. This is the story of fire. Fire is not just a thing but that burns. Fire changed everything. Fire made human different from animals. Without fire, there would be no food like today, no protection, no progress, and maybe no modern world. This is the story of how fire slowly changed human life step by step. Long, long ago, humans were very weak. They had no clothes, no proper homes, and no weapons. They lived in forest and open land. They were always afraid. Big animals hunted them, cold weather hot there, dark nights scared them. Human ate raw food. Raw meat was hard to chew. Raw plants were bitter and dangerous. People got sick easily. Many people died young. Life was very hard. The first time humans saw fire. Yes, fire was not first made by human. Fire came from nature. Lighting heat trees, volcanoes burned land, dry forest caught fire. Early humans saw fire from far away. They saw bright light. They felt heat. At first, they were scared. Fire was dangerous. Fire burned skin. Fire destroyed trees. But humans are curious. They watched fire carefully. Slowly, humans understood something important. Fire is dangerous, but fire is also useful. Fire give heat, fire give light. People start keeping fire interested of running away. They carried burning wood from natural fire. They portrayed that fire carefully. If fire dead, life became hard again. Fire became like a friend. Fire and warmth. Cold weather was deadly before fire. Winter killed many people. People slept at night. Fire changed this. Fire kept human warm and people could live in a colder place. They could travel to new lands. Fire helped humans survive winter. This was a very big change in history. Fire and light. Before fire, night was very dark. Darkness brought fear. Wild animal hunted at night. Fire brought light. People could see at night. They could stay together. They could talk and think. This helped humans before social. This helped humans share idea. Fire created community. Fire and protection. Fire scared wild animal. Animal we are afraid of flame. They stayed away from fire. Humans used fire as protection. They slept near fire. This saved many lives. Fire became a side. Fire and cooked food. This was one of the biggest change in human history. Yes, human learned to cook food. Cooked meat was soft. Cooked plant were safe. People became stronger. Their brains grew bigger. Good food gave more energy. Scientists believe Cooking helped human become intelligent. Fire helped create the human brain. Fire and tools. Fire helped humans make tools. They hardened wood in fire. They shaped stone using heat. Later, fire helped me melt metal. This lead to copper tools. They bronze tools. They iron tools. Fire started technology. Fire and caves. Human lived in caves. Caves were dark and cold. Fire made caves livable. Fire kept animal away. Fire gave light inside cave. Human painted on cave walls using firelight. This was early art. This was early culture. Fire and social life. Fire brought people together. People sat around fire, they talked, they shared stories. This was the beginning of language, this was the beginning of tradition. Fire created human society, learned to make fire. At first, human protected natural fire. Later, they learned to make fire. They rubbed stones, they rubbed wood. This was a huge discovery. Now fire was always available. Human we are no longer dependent on nature. This was the freedom. Fire and migration. Fire allowed humans to move. They went to good lands. They crossed mountains. Fire helped humans to spread across the world, from Africa to Asia, from Asia to Europe, from Europe to everywhere. Fire helped humans conquering that plant. Fire and religion. Religion. Fire became scared. People believe fire was a magic. People worshipped fire. Yes, many religions used fire. Fire rituals started. Fire became a symbol of life. Fire and farming. Fire helped clear forest. People burned land. This made farming possible. Yes, farming changed human life. People settled down. Villages formed and cities were born. Are you know? Fast start civilization. Fire and industry. Thousands of years later, fire powered machine, fire boiled water, steam and gas were born. Factors started, trains moved, fire became energy. Fire and modern world. Today, fire still help us. Electric comes from fire. Cooking or users use fire. Industries uses fire, and fire still saves human life. Conclusion: fire is not just that the fire is the history. Fire made humans human. Without fire, there would be no civilization, no cities, no technology. Fast is the greatest discovery in human history. This, thank you today. Now this is a very interesting story. I am feeling mm, very relaxed now, because I am try to very best now to please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you. Today we will talk about a very old history topic. This story is from a time when there were no house, no cities, no schools, and no books. This is the story of Fire. Fire is not just a thing, but that burns. Fire changed everything. Fire made human different from animals. Without fire, there would be no food like today, no protection, no progress, and maybe no modern world. This is the story of how fire slowly changed human life step by step. Long, long ago, humans were very weak. They had no clothes, no proper homes, and no weapons. They lived in forest and open land. They were always afraid. Big animals hunted them, cold weather, hot there, dark nights scared them. Human ate raw food. Raw meat was hard to chew. Raw plants were bitter and dangerous. People got sick easily. Many people died young. Life was very hard. The first time humans saw fire. Yes, fire was not first made by human. Fire came from nature. Lighting heat trees, volcanoes burned land, dry forest caught fire. Early humans saw fire from far away. They saw bright light. They felt heat. At first, they were scared. Fire was dangerous. Fire burned skin. Fire destroyed trees. But humans are curious. They watched fire carefully. Slowly, humans understood something important. Fire is dangerous, but fire is also useful. Fire give heat, fire give light. People start keeping fire interested of running away. They carried burning wood from natural fire. They portrayed that fire carefully. If fire dead, life became hard again. Fire became like a friend. Fire and warmth. Cold weather was deadly before fire. Winter killed many people. People slept at night. Fire changed this. Fire kept human warm and people could live in a colder place. They could travel to new lands. Fire helped humans survive winter. This was a very big change in history. Fire and light. Before fire, night was very dark. Darkness brought fear. Wild animal hunted at night. Fire brought light. People could see at night. They could stay together. They could talk and think. This helped humans before social. This helped humans share idea. Fire created community. Fire and protection. Fire scared wild animal. Animal we are afraid of flame. They stayed away from fire. Humans used fire as protection. They slept near fire. This saved many lives. Fire became a side fire and cooked food. This was one of the biggest change in human history. Yes, human learned to cook food. Cooked meat was soft. Cooked plant were safe. People became stronger. Their brains grew bigger. Good food gave more energy. Scientists believe cooking helped human become intelligent. Fire helped create the human brain. Fire and tools. Fire helped humans make tools. They hardened wood in fire. They shaped stone using heat. Later, fire helped me melt metal. This lead to copper tools. They bronze tools, they iron tools. Fire started technology. Fire and caves. Human lived in caves. Caves were dark and cold. Fire made caves livable. Fire kept animal away. Fire gave light inside cave. Human painted on cave walls using firelight. This was early art. This was early culture. Fire and social life. Fire brought people together. People sat around fire, they talked, they shared stories. This was the beginning of language, this was the beginning of tradition. Fire created human society, learned to make fire. At first, human protected natural fire. Later, they learned to make fire. They rubbed stones, they rubbed wood. This was a huge discovery. Now fire was always available. Human we are no longer dependent on nature. This was the freedom. Fire and migration. Fire allowed humans to move. They went to good lands. They crossed mountains. Fire helped humans to spread across the world. From Africa to Asia, from Asia to Europe, from Europe to everywhere. Fire helped humans conquering that plant. Fire and religion. Fire became scared. People believe fire was a magic. People worshipped fire. Yes, many religions used fire. Fire rituals started. Fire became a symbol of life. Fire and farming. Fire helped clear forest. People burned land. This made farming possible. Yes, farming changed human life. People settled down. Villages formed and cities were born. Are you know? Fast start civilization. Fire and industry. Thousands of years later, fire powered machine, fire boiled water, steam and gas were born. Factors started, trains moved, fire became energy. Fire and modern world. Today, fire still help us. Electric comes from fire. Cooking or users use fire. Industries uses fire, and fire still saves human life. Conclusion: fire is not just that the fire is the history. Fire made humans human. Without fire, there would be no civilization, no cities, no technology. Fast is the greatest discovery in human history. This, thank you today. Now this is a very interesting story. I am feeling very relaxed now because I am try to very best now to please subscribe, like, and comment. Thank you.